Hello and welcome. Thank you for popping into my channel. If you are new here, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell if you find this helpful so that you don't miss out on the next video. Check out all my previous videos as they're all helpful as well. Comment below with anything that you need help with or topics you'd like me to cover. With that out of the way, guys, we are getting into it. It is the last step in our MERN or MENS stack. We have done an Express backend, an Express Node backend with React, and then as a bonus, we've also done this using Svelte. So we have MERN, Mongo, Express, Node, and React, and we also have MENS, Mongo, Express, Node, and Svelte. So awesome, we're doing the last step today, and that's the Mongo. If you've not seen any of the other videos in this series, I'll link to those in the description. The source code for this will be available in my repository. I'll link to that as well. If you check out the current state of Mongo, they're going to try to push you to the cloud version. I'm not going to use the cloud version. I'm going to use the Docker version. Docker is awesome. It's super easy to install. Once it's installed, pulling containers and images is really straightforward. Well, you guys are going to be surprised at how easy this is. Let's first give a demonstration. Looking at our old application, we had created that backend, and I'm just going to fire it up here. You can see it's now running. And I'm going to fire up, I've already fired up the Vite. So Vite is going inside of our backend. We just have a basic app.js node file, and it's using this users route. And when we hit this route with a GET request, it's spitting this array of users that we created back to the front end, and then we're just displaying those. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. And you can see that everything populated here. The GET request was successful from our Node.js. So now we are going to take this one step further. So I'm going to go ahead and shut off that server. And the first thing we need to do is let's go get our Docker image. And what we want is the latest version of Mongo. So if you've installed Docker already, congratulations, you've taken a huge step towards furthering your career. So let's just do a docker pull mongo latest. And this is going to do its thing. Now the next thing that we need to be sure of, and I'm going to link to these in the description as well. There's a couple of links that are really important here because this is super easy, but there's a couple things that you just can't miss. We will get to that in just a second. Actually, I'm going to start getting there while that's going. We have the official Docker image from Docker, and I'll link to this so that you guys can see the documentation from the Docker side, what it's talking about. This just tells you how to use the image. But I also will link to this other dev blog because this documentation is kind of missing a key piece here, and it stumped me for a second even though I'm familiar with Docker, but I was able to recover quickly. So now that I've downloaded that image, we need to run it. And when we run it, we need to make sure we're being very specific in what we're doing with the ports. So as I was telling you earlier, if you used Mongo DB inside of a Docker container, it works just as if you're running it in your own local machine if you have the port mapping set up correctly. And that's where the official documentation from Docker is kind of funny. It doesn't actually point that out. So I'm going to link to this earthly.dev/blog/mongodb-docker because this is really, it lays it out exactly how we need to do it for us, and how most likely you would need to do this at work, and in most situations you're going to be needing to map these ports. And so this is the command, this is how we need to run our command. We need to type in docker run, and the -d is running this as a detached process in the background. So we want to be doing that, and then we need to have this P flag, and the P flag is the port mapping. That's what I was trying to tell you is so important, because if you don't do this, Docker's not going to know where to be accepting communications from. It will know where they're supposed to be going, but it won't know where to be accepting them from. And then we're going to give this a name. Let's call this Mongo API. And then we're going to say we're going to use the image that we just pulled, which was the Mongo latest. Now let's give that a go. We can see that we've got a SHA returned from Docker. That means that the container was successfully ran. And if I do a Docker PS, you will see that we have that container using the image that we pulled, the Mongo latest, and it's up and running, been running for 10 seconds. And here is where, if you don't see this in your console, be very afraid, because that means that you missed something in your port mapping, and you will not get any communication if you don't have that properly set. So I think I've covered that extensively. I can't stress the importance of that one step enough. Don't follow the running command listed in the official documentation, because for some reason they leave that part out, and I don't know why. It's kind of strange to me. So we have Mongo DB up and running. We are already 90% of the way there, getting close already. Let's go into our source code for our API, and in here we just need to do a few things. And so inside of our Mongo API, I'd called this API in the first version. I wanted to call it Mongo, and then really I should have updated the Svelte front end to go with this to be full stack, because we're now upgrading from that 3/4 stack to the full stack. If you guys have followed all these videos, congratulations. You are a million times further ahead in your career experience than most people. So let's get straight to it. What do we need to do? What are the changes? Well, surprisingly, not many. We do need to install one package and one package only into this API backend, and that is install Mongo DB. Make sure to not miss the DB. There's actually no changes. We're not going to make any changes in our app.js. We're not going to make any changes in www. Everything is going to happen in our users.js, and then what we are going to do is we're going to create one new file. So let's create a new file. Let's call this dbconnection.js. And then inside of our dbconnection.js file, we need to do a const bracket Mongo client is assigned require, and then we're going to pull from that Mongo DB, just like that. Then let's create a function. Let's just call this fire connection, and that's going to be an anonymous function, and in here we're going to say const URL is equal, and then we have to be careful in our typing here, and this should be MongoDB : / and then in our Docker, remember we mapped that port, so this is where we're targeting. And we can just copy and paste that. MongoDB / 0.0.0 : 27017. Perfect. Now we need to fire up the client and tell Node to hit a new Mongo client using that URL. And then this command both sets and creates a database if it does not exist, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's just call this all users. And if those things are successful, let's give ourselves a message. So if that was successful, that means that the client was fired up successfully. And let's go ahead and console.log client up and connected. Okay. Now let's const db, and now we're going to actually fire up the database portion. So let's do a client.db, and then put that name that we just chose there. And then now this command is also awesome. This is going to create this collection if it doesn't exist. If it does, it's going to tell the database we are using that collection. And let's just call this users. So if our client fires up successfully, let's print out that message, and then let's create and or select the all users database, and then create and or select the collection users. If both of those things are successful, let's give ourselves one more pat on the back and another console.log. Console.log, let's say DB and collection, good to go. And then we're going to return database is DB and get rid of that colon. Did not mean to put that there. And collection is collection. Then right here, let's just go ahead and fire that function and extract those out and return them one more time. Const DB and collection is assigned fire connection, and then we'll do a module.exports DB is the big DB and collection. So we have our fire connection that's going to take the URL we've supplied. It's going to connect to the Mongo client running in our Docker container. It's going to select the database named all users. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it. Then it's going to select the collection users in that database. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it. We are nearly there. Inside of our users.js, now we need to make a few changes in here. Inside of our users, we first need to, let's get that connection file that we just created, and let's say require /db connection. Okay, and let's change this to base users. So I'm also going to, we're going to cheat here. So we don't have to enter the Docker container and populate this with our users. We're going to do that right from our node as well. You guys can then take this a step further and implement creating individual and collection users yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to create two functions. Let's say const get all users, and this is an async function, and it's going to take a collection. Then we are going to say const all users is assigned await collection.find, and this is the Mongo command to find everything inside of that collection. It just returns everything. So in our case, we've selected the users collection inside of the all users database, and so it's going to return everything inside that collection. And then let's just make this an array, to array. And then return all users. Pretty straightforward. Now let's do one more. Let's do a const initialize users, and that is another async function that's going to take that collection, and it's going to say const initialize users is assigned await collection.insert many, and let's say base users. You guys see where I'm going with this? This is where we're cheating. So we're going to run this little command and check. We're going to do a check, and if this is the first time that we're running this inside of our Docker container, inside attached to that Mongo client, and the database is empty, we're just going to go ahead and populate it and then run it again, so that we don't have to enter all this manually. Pretty cool, right? I think so. Okay, so then we need to make a small change here. This is no longer going to be a regular function. This is going to be an async function so that we can await the items that we're trying to get from the database. Let's do a let check users and assign that await get all users. So let's go ahead and ping the database, see if there are users inside of the collection attached to the database that we have. So in the all users database, go to the users collection and get everything that's there. Now what we're going to do is if this fails, or check users.length is equal to 0, then what we want to do is do an await initialize users, and we're going to do that on that same collection. And if we are having to initialize this, then we need to grab this one more time. So let's just copy all of this except for the let and paste it again. So if we come through here and we run this check and there's no users in there, then we need to initialize that. So let's initialize it and then grab them back out so that we are in fact getting them from the database. And then after that, let's just do a console.log and say retrieved users and do a check users. All right, you guys with me? We're just barely 20 minutes in here, and we are just about done. Actually, that's it. Congratulations, you did it. Let's fire this bad boy up and see what happens. Okay, so let's just double check everything. Everything is looking good. Let's try to fire this up. npm start. Client is up and connected. DB into the collection are good to go. We do in fact have our Vite server still running. Let's pull this up and go to our Vite Svelte application. And I'm going to slide this over and I'm going to hit the refresh button to manually fire this again. And then that way we can see what's coming back from the database, the node layer on the left hand side. So let's go ahead and fire this. You can see it went ahead and inserted those objects, but we had a problem. So let's go ahead. So everything went into the database correctly, but we did drop the ball somewhere. And that's because I forgot to change this to be returning those check users, because we changed this to the base users, and we're no longer returning any regular users. We're either setting the database with the check users or returning the ones from the database. So let's go ahead and save that and then fire our backend backup. Okay, and then go back to our browser, and now we've had a fail, so we can just hit retry, and you can see two things. One, the client successfully pulled everything. Congratulations. And in the left hand side of the terminal, you will see this looks pretty similar, except for you'll notice that since we had already populated the database the first go through, it skips that portion and just returns the users that were already in the database. So pretty sweet. There you have it. We have now finished our MERN and MENS full stack application. It's pretty basic, but you know what? You guys have the code now and the tools to take this to the next level and do whatever it is you'd like to do with it. I hope that you found this video helpful. Thanks for coding along with me. If you did in fact like this, don't forget to hit that like, check out the rest of the videos in my channel, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, you have a great day.